Jesus said to his disciples, "Let us go across to the other side." Whew. So I read and prayed and reflected with the readings for this week. These words hit my gut and my heart. Let us go across to the other side. I am in a season, we as a community are in a season of transition and leave-taking, embarking on a journey from what we have known to what is unknown, going from here to there, going across to the other side. There is good news in these words and in this story today from Mark's gospel, profoundly good news. And part of that good news is that, like Jesus' disciples in the boat, we have journeyed together before. The community here at Good Sam has done a lot of going across to the other side. And y'all know I love a good story. And as I've been thinking about going across to the other side, there's a story about this community that keeps bubbling up. A story from my first weeks at Good Sam. I began on August 1st, 2018, and there was a women's retreat scheduled for August 18th. I had it on my calendar before I even arrived. We would stay one night at the retreat house at Grace Point, and there was a large group that planned to attend. This would be a great opportunity for introduction and fellowship, and it was. A wonderful group gathered, thoughtful programming, including art and yoga, good food, singing and worship, and some free time. During one of these free times, a smaller group decided to go on a hike. The retreat house sits at the top of a steep hill in the woods with hiking trails just out the front door. And I was invited to join and excited for the movement and the fresh air. Little did I know that this was going to be a going across to the other side kind of experience. Keep in mind that at the time I was about 20 weeks pregnant with Rob. Also keep in mind that even though I have lived and had at the time lived in East Tennessee longer than I have anywhere else, I still thought fresh air was a possibility on an afternoon hike in August. There was air. It didn't move, and it was full of humidity. So the women going on this hike, there were 3 of them, and I'm not going to name them in the sermon, though one of them may be here this morning, and if you ask me after the service, I may be willing to share initials. So these women, or at least one of them, swore that she had done this hike before. It was an easy loop. And as I think back, I do believe her. I believe she had done this hike at a time when the trail was maintained, at a time when obstacles were removed and the trail was clearly marked. As we set out on our journey, our hike quickly became an exercise in bushwhacking. Over downed trees and under low-hanging limbs, coming to a fork in the road or a place where no trail path was evident and making the decision of which way to go. We did consider turning around, but felt we had gone far enough in our journey that we had less ground in front of us than we did behind. At one point, the path was so steep and covered with so many leaves, so think really slick and easy to fall, that I actually sat down, remember pregnant belly? Sat down and slid on my bottom with one hiker in front of me and another behind. And there was another point where we actually walked in this same way. I held the shoulder of the woman in front of me and was supported by the woman behind to make sure that I didn't lose my footing. We journeyed together through unfamiliar territory and eventually made it to the other side. We were only at Grace Point for the one night, and I had not planned to shower, but I showered. Not only because the not fresh East Tennessee August air was clinging to me, but because our adventures had also allowed chiggers, or those tiny red bugs, I think they were chiggers, to settle all over us. Those who had not gone hiking continued to point them out in our hair and on our clothes. Just an easy loop, a short afternoon hike. Welcome to Good Sam, where we go across together to the other side. In this community, we know what it is, as we hear today in Psalm 133, to live together in unity, to know God's blessing in our experience of community, hiking from here to there, celebrating births and grieving deaths, entering a pandemic and emerging from it, dreaming and discerning about a capital campaign and then seeing monies raised and projects begun, walking with each other in illness and also in healing. It has been my deepest joy in these past almost 6 years to go across to the other side with you, to journey Sunday by Sunday to the space of this altar and be nourished by bread and wine, to journey with you to the waters of the baptismal font, to welcome new members and recommit ourselves as disciples of Jesus. This community knows what it is to journey together. And I am so grateful to have been formed as a priest by you, with you walking before and behind me through unfamiliar territory to the other side. You will continue to journey together and to bless those who have the privilege of serving alongside you. You know how to do this. That is good news. And we hear more of that good news today. Jesus is with the disciples in the boat on the Sea of Galilee when a storm arises. Angry seas and rough winds, the disciples are terrified, and remember that most of the disciples are fishermen. They are experienced sailors. They know how to do this. And they know when to be afraid at sea. As the storm rages, Jesus is asleep and the disciples are indignant as they wake him up. "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" And Jesus speaks to the wind and to the sea, just as the Spirit has spoken over the waters since the beginning. "Peace, be still." And the storm ceases, calm after the chaos. And we're told that the disciples are filled with great awe. And we may miss something in the translation here because the disciples do not experience awe as in wonder and reverence. The disciples are terrified of Jesus and his display of power over the wind and the sea, just as they were terrified of the storm. "Who is this," they say, "that even the wind and the sea obey him?" It turns out that the grace and mercy of God is just as wild and unpredictable as the weather on the Sea of Galilee. And that's terrifying. It's terrifying because it means that God does not act within our timelines or according to our best plans. The world unravels without our permission, and God is also present and acting without our permission. Sometimes Jesus is asleep in the middle of the storm, and we mistake his sleeping for his absence. After Jesus proclaims, "Peace, be still," he asks the disciples, "Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?" Jesus is not dismissing fear or worry in the face of danger. Jesus is saying to his disciples, Why did you doubt my presence with you? I was here loving you before the storm. I was here loving you in the midst of the chaos. I am here loving you now. You can be afraid of the storm, but don't ever be afraid that I am absent from you. You can be afraid of the storm, but don't ever be afraid that I am absent from you. Just like the parable Jesus shared last week, the seed sprouts and grows, the planter does not know how. The seed buried there in the ground, asleep, it seems, until the first green shoot appears. Peace, be still. Jesus is always in the boat with us, always journeying with us to the other side, wild and unpredictable, outside of any boundary we might impose, imagine, or create. What good news! Let us go across to the other side.